Yasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Vadadari Yasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Paramahansa Stotras of the Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBD Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravachakarya Stotras of the Shri Srimad Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Natha Bodhi Govinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shlakadidas Thakur Principal Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gokinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtana Ki Jai Vrihat Madanga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 14, Text 34. Ditiruvacha Name Garbham Imam Brahman Name Garbham Imam Brahman Bhutanam Rishabho Vadhit Bhutanam Rishabho Vadhit Rudrapatirhi Bhutanam Rudrapatirhi Bhutanam Yasya Karavam Amhasam Yasya Karavam Amhasam Ditiruvacha Name Garbham Imam Brahmam Bhutanam Rishabho Vadit Rudrapatirhi Bhutanam Yasya Karavam Amhasam. Vaishnavis. Diti Uvacha. The beautiful Diti said, Na, not, me, my, Garbham, pregnancy, Imam, this, Brahman, O Brahmana, Bhutanam, of all living entities, Rishabha, the noblest of all living entities, Avadhit, let him kill, Rudra, Lord Shiva, Patihi, Master, he, certainly, Bhutanam, of all living entities, Yasya, whose, Akarabam, I have done, Amhasam, offense. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The beautiful Diti said, my dear Brahmana, kindly see that my embryo is not killed by Lord Shiva, the Lord of all living entities, because of the great offense I have committed against him. Purport. Diti was conscious of her offense and was anxious to be excused by Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva has two popular names, Rudra and Asutosh. He is very prone to anger as well as quickly pacified. Diti knew that because of his being quickly angered, he might spoil the pregnancy she had so unlawfully achieved. But because he was also Asutosh, she implored her Brahmana husband to help her in pacifying Lord Shiva, for her husband was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. In other words, Lord Shiva might have been angry with Diti because she obliged her husband to transgress the law, but he would not refuse her husband's prayer. Therefore, the application for excuse was submitted through her husband. She prayed to Lord Shiva as follows. Om Meghanatamarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Didati Swapadantikam. So here we have Diti, and she's lamenting. She's regretting what she has done. And so we don't want to be in this position. You know, her situation is, she knew even before she engaged in that activity that it was the wrong thing to do. Yet somehow or another she couldn't restrain herself from doing it, and now she's regretting that she did it, and she's lamenting, and she's fearful, and she's anxious. She's anxious that, you know, her pregnancy might be destroyed by Lord Shiva because he's so offended, etc. So this is not just, this is a universal problem. which we're being, it's being described here. It's her problem, Kashyapa Muni. I'm sure he's also feeling a certain amount of regret that he's probably realizing I could have been a bit stronger. She didn't have a gun pointed at my head. It's not like, it was a life or death threatening situation for me. I could have also been a bit stronger. And so they're both lamenting and regretting. And as I said, this is, and these are not just some sudras on the street. This is, Diti is the daughter of Daksha, a very highly elevated family in the universal hierarchy. And Kashyapa Muni is the son of Kardama Muni. He's considered one of the Sapta Rishis, very, sages that are glorified throughout history. So they're both very elevated personalities, socially speaking, and yet they're having this problem. And actually, so it's a universal problem. It's a universal problem, and it's in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna inquired from Krishna about the nature of this problem. He said, in the 3rd chapter, he goes, Ata kena prayukto yam papam chadati purusha anichana pivarshneya balad ivanayojita. Arjuna asked Krishna, by what is one impelled to act sinfully, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? See? So that's basically what we're looking at here. They were both, Diti in particular was impelled to act sinfully, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force. And Arjuna, many thousands, millions perhaps years later, is asking Krishna about this same problem. And Krishna, of course, gives the famous answer, Kama Esha, Krodha Esha, Rajaguna, Samudbhavas, Mahasano, Mahapatma, Vidyanam, Ihavarinam. It's lust and lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and which is later transformed into wrath. And that's the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So, and then, throughout the rest of that 3rd chapter, Krishna explains more about it, and he kind of gives a solution how to deal with that problem. But so we don't want to be in this situation that we're being forced, impelled to act sinfully, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force, right? So what's the solution? Well, Krishna instructs Arjuna towards the end of that 3rd chapter. He says, therefore, Arjuna, best of the Bhartas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. And then he goes on to say, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So that's, summary kind of instruction there on how to deal with it. But this also comes up, the same discussion comes up in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam here, and it's maybe explained a little bit more elaborately, or additional light and further insight is thrown on the subject in this conversation between Maharaj Parikshit and Sukadev Goswami. And how it goes is this. This is beginning of the 6th canto. So Sukadev Goswami has just finished explaining to Maharaj Parikshit, he's just finished describing the hellish planets and the punishment, the suffering that living entities experience when they go to the hellish planets as a result of engaging in sinful activities. So Maharaj Parikshit, being a Vaishnava, he's concerned. He's feeling like, whoa, that's not good. And he's inquiring from Sukadev Goswami, what can be done? What can be done so that people don't have to suffer in these, hellish situations, in these hellish planets? How could they, be relieved of their sinful reactions and sinful activities? So Sukadev Goswami, he starts explaining to him about, they have to do atonement. If you commit sinful activities, there's going to be a sinful reaction. But before you die, before the person dies, if they perform atonement, which is like, penance and austerities and brahmacharya, etc., celibacy, etc., then, you can counteract the reactions to your sinful activities, and then you don't have to suffer the reactions because you've counteracted them. So Maharaj Parikshit, when he heard that, he said, he was very respectful, but he said, no, I'm not so sure that works, And then he explained, he said, at this point, I'll just read a couple sentences from the book here. Yeah, so Maharaj Parikshit goes, he points out to Sukadeva Goswami that, with all due respect, Guru Maharaj, it seems that, people, they know about atonement, and there's people who they actually perform the atonement, and then they do the same thing again. So I'm doubtful that that's a good process. You follow what I'm saying? He's saying, yeah, okay, people know about this process of atonement for sins, and they engage in the atonement for sins, and they get relief from reactions temporarily, but then they do the same thing again. And he says here, this is Maharaj Parikshit speaking, he says, nevertheless, in spite of such knowledge, one is forced to commit sins again and again, even after performing acts of atonement. And he says, therefore, what is the value of such atonement? He's kind of challenging Sukadeva Goswami on that point. Now, just so you know, he's not, as I said, he's being very respectful. Prabhupada points out in the purports to this section here that Sukadeva Goswami was actually testing Maharaj Parikshit's intelligence. Because he's going to give him a better answer. It's coming up. But he was testing his intelligence. And ultimately, the Bhagavatam, as the Bhagavad Gita, it's all staged. It's meant for our education. So, this is a pastime. It's going on so that Sukadeva Goswami can have the opportunity to elaborate on the answer, the correct answer and the importance of it. Okay, so Maharaj Parikshit, he points out, after making that statement, he says, this atonement, it seems to him, it's like the bathing of an elephant. An elephant cleanses itself by taking a full bath, but then throws dust over its head and body as soon as it returns to the land. So it sounds like it's counterproductive. What's the point? What's the point of taking a bath? As soon as you come out, you take the elephant with his trunk, he takes the dust and he throws it all over his body again. Actually, just for the elephant's actually not that dumb. He's not taking a bath for the purpose of getting clean. He's taking a bath for cooling off. And then when they put the dust back on themselves again, that actually protects them from the direct sunlight. It actually it enables them to stay cooler for longer. So the elephant's not so dumb, but it's a good example, from our perspective. From the perspective of getting clean, it doesn't seem like it's, achieving anything, right? But so that's why that it's a good analogy there, a good metaphor. So Maharaj Parikshit raises this objection, and then Sukadeva Goswami, upon hearing this, he goes, well, yeah, actually, there's something to what you're saying. He points out that he acknowledges that, yeah, it's a fact, that by engaging in these acts of atonement, it only temporarily it neutralizes impious actions, but only temporarily, and he admits that it doesn't uproot one's desires. And he goes on to say that he explains the situation, that sins are very deep-rooted. The sinful consciousness is very deep-rooted. I'll just read what he says. He says, sins are like the dried leaves of creepers beneath a bamboo tree, which may be burned by fire, although their roots remain to grow again at the first opportunity. Okay, so is that clear? I'll elaborate upon that to make it hopefully perfectly clear, because we've experienced it right here in Culver City in Southern California over the last couple of months. I don't know among everybody here how much attention devotees pay to the scenery, the landscape around here. I tend to pay a bit of attention to it. And if you noticed, before we had all this rain, a couple months, for the last few months, very dry. If you look at those hills, or from the background there, those hills were dry, brown, gray, totally, and nothing. It's just ground. Okay? And one would think, upon looking at those hills, that this is barren land. That would be the obvious conclusion one would come to. This is obviously just barren land. Look at it. It's dry, it's brown, it's gray, it's just dirt. Pretty much that's what it was, you know. It's better. Yeah. Do you want me to wait or just keep? Yeah. So, yeah, so after the rain, we had all this rain, and lo and behold, it's all green. And you know, it didn't even stay green. The hills were green after maybe just a few days. You know, it rained and then the sun comes out, and it's gone from green to yellow because all that seeds were in there for different types of plants and creepers, and they've grown. They've grown from just like little green grass to sunflowers to I don't know what else is going on there. You know, different types of plants. And it's like overgrown now, and you can't. Paths I used to walk on, sometimes I go for a walk, you know, through those hills there, you can't even get through because it's just all overgrown, and you know, so the point is that it was just waiting for an opportunity. You know, those seeds were there in the ground. It's superficially it looks like it's all taken care of. There's no question of anything growing there. But he's holding a picture of it. He took a picture of it the other day, and you know it looks like nothing could grow there. Nothing. It's just like barren, finished. But as soon as the rain comes, it's like a forest. Not quite a forest, but it's you know green with this kind of plant, that kind of plant, and this kind of creeper, and like that. So it's the same thing. You know, you might perform these activities, and you cut down. You know, it's kind of like mowing the lawn or something like that. You cut down the reactions to the sinful activities by performing this atonement. But then when it gets a little water, because the seeds are still in there, the roots are kind of there, you know, and it's just up they come again. So that's, you know, described here. And Sukadev Goswami, you might have heard Prabhupada quote this. Those who are familiar with Prabhupada's Sanskrit quoting probably have heard him quote these lines many times. Tapasya brahmacharjena samena damena cha tyagena satya sochabhyam yamena niyamena va. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Sounds familiar to Archita, Rabindranath, the devotees Prabhupada disciples, Maharaj, who've listened to Prabhupada lectures. You know, Prabhupada would quote that. And the translation for that is, to concentrate the mind, one must observe a life of celibacy and not fall down. One must undergo the austerity of voluntarily giving up sense enjoyment. One must then control the mind and senses, give charity, be truthful, clean, and nonviolent, follow the regulative principles, like that. See, so that's the Pasha program, and it's recommended, and it is, you know, good to counteract reactions to sinful activities. But then ultimately, Sukadev Goswami goes on to say that just if you do that, and that alone, it's not sufficient, because it's like I said, it's like mowing the lawn. You know, it's just you're not pulling out the sinful desire at the root. How you do that, he explains in the next verse. He says, Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayanaha agam dunvanti kartsnenya niharam ivabashkara. And this is a very famous verse. It goes, only a rare person who has adopted complete, unalloyed devotional service to Krishna can uproot the weeds of sinful actions with no possibility that they will revive. This is the one and only process, okay? With no possibility that they will revive. He can do this simply by discharging devotional service, just as the sun can immediately dissipate fog by its rays. So that's the solution. I mean, it's the same thing that Krishna says in the end of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, but as I said, it's kind of nicely described here, and Sukadeva Goswami elaborates on it a bit more. So that's the solution. How not to be in this predicament that Diti and Kashyapa Muni are finding themselves in right at this point, and so many conditioned souls all throughout the universe are finding themselves in, probably on a regular daily basis, practically, not knowing something is the wrong thing to do, and then you're just impelled by force, just to do it anyway, and then you regret it, you're lamenting, and then you do some atonement for it, and then after a while you're back doing it again. It's a vicious cycle. So according to Krishna and according to Sukadeva Goswami here, this is the one and only solution, that you have to just surrender, engage in devotional service, and then that uproots these desires, right, totally, and then you're free from that problem. So in the verse here today, just to give you an idea like how complicated it was, Diti is hoping that her husband will pray to Lord Shiva, because he's a great devotee. Anyway, that was her hope, but it didn't happen. Prabhupada says here in the purport that Lord Shiva might have been angry with Diti because she obliged her husband to transgress the law, but he would not refuse her husband's prayer. But if you read on, at least to the end of the chapter, there is no husband's prayer. She was hoping maybe that he would do that. He would pray on her behalf. Don't abort the embryo. Don't destroy the embryo. But it didn't happen. And it goes, therefore, the application for excuse was submitted through her husband, but he never did it. He wound up, as we will see in days to come, that he wound up just chastising her and informing her that, okay, you're going to give birth to 2 demons, and they're going to be a big problem for everybody throughout the universe. They're going to kill innocent people, they're going to torture women, they're going to be, a problem for the great saintly people, and like that. And he does make a concession, though, because he could see that she's really, repentant. So he does, he mentions to her that, but anyway, your grandson's going to be a great devotee. He's going to be a pure devotee, and he's going to, go back to Godhead. And so she was happy to hear that her children were going to be killed by Krishna, because she was knowledgeable enough. Just see how powerful lust is. She was so knowledgeable. She was even knowledgeable to the point where she understood that if somebody's killed by Krishna, they get liberation. So she understood that, and she was happy to hear that was going to be the case, and that her grandson was going to be a great devotee. So, anyway. So, I got a lot more notes here, but I'm not sure if I could present what I even prepared to say in a coherent fashion. So I'll stop there. Does anybody have any question about what I said up to this point? Rabindranath Prabhu.
You mentioned how Sukadeva Goswami mentioned about doing atonement, and then Maharaj Parikshit said, what's the use of atonement? So in other words, if the spiritual master says something, is it sometimes a test that the disciples should question that? Just like in Sukadeva Goswami Maharaj Parikshit, or what?
Well, he didn't really challenge. He didn't really challenge the point that Sukadeva Goswami was making, but he presented a doubt, and in the mood of, could you give me some further clarification on the whole subject? Can you say something in addition to it? Which Sukadeva Goswami did, which of course satisfied him. And on the point of atonement is not something in opposition to devotional service, but it has to be done in conjunction with devotion. If you take devotional service out of the picture, it doesn't work. Atonement's not a bit, those things that were mentioned by Sukadeva Goswami, tapasya, brahmacharjena, samena, dachana, those are good things, you see. But those things in and of themselves, not sufficient. But when you combine that, when you add devotional service into the picture, then that's a very first-class successful program. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Oh, Archie Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for a nice class. Prabhupada answers that by saying that absurd inquiries and blind following are both not to be done. In other words, don't give up your intelligence, but your questions have to be in the context, they have to be respectful, and you have to perform service. Tadvidi panipatena pariprashnena sevaya. If you're not serving the spiritual master, you don't have any right to ask. He's not obliged to answer your questions if you're not a follower, a disciple. So that's the first thing. You should know that you need a spiritual master. You should want answers to these questions. When you approach, hopefully, the right spiritual master, then it has to be in the mood of service, respect, and then you can ask. So the spiritual master is not asking you to give up your intelligence, but the inquiry has to be relevant, and it should not be flippant, like what happened here in New Dwarka, where those devotees were flippant Prabhupada. Oh, how could, Ugrasena have 40 quadrillion bodyguards? Where would they pass through? They fell down because it was a stupid flip question. It was disrespectful. So one has to be respectful, but don't give up your intelligence. If you have an intelligent question, then you put it before the spiritual master, who may or may not answer, or he may not answer immediately, maybe in the future. And one has to have that faith. If you think, understand in your heart that this person is actually a pure devotee of Krishna, you accept them in that way, then you have to pretty much accept however they treat you. You cannot force them to treat you a certain way. See? An example of that is here in Prabhupada's garden, where somebody asked, Prabhupada, because Prabhupada had said, fall down is sometimes accidental. So the devotee asked, Prabhupada, how do we know that it's accidental? So Prabhupada didn't answer immediately. He took his massage, and then sometime later on he said, if the devotee comes back, then it was accidental. So again, you can't force the spiritual master to answer when you want them to answer. The question has to be respectful, and you have to be performing service. Otherwise, you may not get an answer at all.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Maharaj?
Just to continue the point that Archita Prabhu was making, and that is, if the devotee realizes that he has truly made a mistake, he's done something wrong, something he should not have done, and that should be felt completely, and in feeling it completely, one should feel, yes, the guilt, the disgust with oneself that he has gone against the rule. And so in that, one can go to the next step and feel this helplessness. He was not able to deal with that force. It was beyond him, and therefore he yielded to it. At that point, that is when the devotee should pray with all his heart and soul sincerely. This is mentioned quite often in the Bhagavatam. Pray, not mechanically, not just automatically, but with one's heart and soul, that he's truly, sincerely, deeply regretful of what he has done. And he begs to be forgiven if the Lord will find that in his heart to do. And it's up to Krishna to make that decision. So, but when a prayer is done with such heartfelt feeling, the Lord is quick to excuse. When there is no heartfelt feeling, but just a mechanical utterance, the Lord is not so eager to excuse. So we should try to understand that. Anytime that we go against Krishna's instruction, Krishna's will, Krishna's desire, we should feel that intensely, because that's going against God. And if we go against God, we deserve to be punished. And if we deserve to be punished, then we should be ready for it. Nonetheless, punishment can be very painful, very difficult, very troublesome, very full of trial, and almost difficult to bear and to go on. That's why the devotee begs for forgiveness. He begs because he knows what is going to happen, and it's beyond, that's even beyond him, the pain, the suffering, the difficulty, the tribulation, and all that. So that is the only way that we can be forgiven, and that is by genuine, deep crying out to the Supreme Lord in prayer. I wish I had the strength. I wish I had the power. I wish I had the, but I don't now, and I need your help. So please, lend me your help. Lend me your strength. Lend me your guidance. Lend me your direction. Lend me your discrimination so that I can say no the next time. Because this time I wasn't able to do that. So that shows a certain amount of sincerity, that he actually is regretting that he wished he hadn't done that. And he wants the power and the strength to resist it in the future. And even now, he begs if he can be forgiven so that in the future, he will not do what he did and he will be free. That is his only, our only recourse is our helplessness and our begging the Lord for our understanding where we're at. And if it is a true repentance, then the Lord may or may not, according to his own will, forgive, or he may just allow what has happened to happen.
Thank you
This
for
is
a valuable comment.
yeah.
Premise, question? Yeah.
So, in one letter, Srila Prabhupada said, then, if devotee, if he's not very serious and is still committing sinful activities again, then Prabhupada said, even if what Maharaj said, if he really regrets, I don't want anymore. But Prabhupada said he will be punished by Krishna. So I'm just wondering if you explain maybe some example or just in general, what kind of punishment devotee will get it from Krishna?
Well, you can lose your attraction for Krishna consciousness. That's the worst punishment. If you disobey the instructions of the spiritual master, I think Prabhupada said something like once, twice, 3 times, and you got a problem. So if you're disobeying the instructions of the spiritual master, ultimately you'll lose your desire to be a devotee, and you'll go away. And then you're back in the cycle of birth and death. So I think that's the punishment we should fear the most.
That implies that the impulse to engage in, thank you, that impulse to engage in, when you say give up the spiritual life, that means, generally speaking, engaging in sense gratification as the end-all and be-all of one's life. In other words, as he asked that question, what is the worst thing? The worst thing can happen is you lose the path of Krishna consciousness, which is the path of purification, which is the path leading to love of God. You lose that. And what replaces it? Just love of sense pleasure of one sort or another, which takes one down deeper into the pit of sense gratification.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
वेणुर्मधुरो वेणुर्मधुरो रेणुर्मधुरः पाणिर्मधुर पादो मधुरो नृत्यं मधुरं साख्यं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् His flute is sweet, his foot dust is sweet. His hands are sweet, his feet are sweet. His dancing is sweet, his friendship is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. Madhuradhipatir akhilam madhuram. मधुराधिपतेर अखिलं मधुरम् अधरं मधुरं वदनं मधुरं नयनं मधुरं हसितं मधुरं हृदयं मधुरं गमनं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेर अखिलं मधुरम् गीतं मधुरं गीतं मधुरं पीतं मधुरं भुक्तं मधुरं शुप्तं मधुरं हृदय रूपं मधुरं तिलकं मधुरं रूपं मधुरं तिलकमधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेर अखिलं मधुरम् His singing is sweet. If you're not sure who are we talking about when I say his, we're talking about Krishna. So Krishna's flute is sweet. His singing is sweet. His yellow cloth is sweet. His eating is sweet. His sleeping is sweet. His beauty is sweet. His tilak is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं बोलो मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतिर् अखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतिर् अखिलं मधुरम् अधरं मधुरं वदनं मधुरं नयनं मधुरं हसितं मधुरम् हृदयं मधुरं गमनं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेर अखिलं करणं मधुरं तरणं मधुरम् करणं मधुरं तरणं मधुरं हरणं मधुरं रमणं मधुरं वमितं मधुरं शमितं मधुरं वमितं मधुरं शमितं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेर अखिलं मधुरम् His deeds are sweet, his liberating is sweet, his stealing is sweet, his love sports are sweet, his oblations are sweet, his tranquility is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. Madhuradhipatir akhilam madhuram Madhuradhipatir akhilam madhuram Adharam madhuram Vadanam madhuram Nayanam madhuram Hasitam madhuram Hirdayam madhuram Gamanam madhuram Madhuradhipatir Akhilam madhuram Madhuradhipatir Akhilam madhuram गुंजा मधुरा माला मधुरा सागा पानी ने 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 पग पग साने नि सा पग नि पसानी रे सानी गने ध धम पग ग ग ग ग रे 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 धसा रे ग रे धसा गुंजा मधुरा माला मधुरा यमुना मधुरा विच्ची मधुरा शलिलं मधुरं कमलं मधुरं शलिलं मधुरं कमलं मधुरं together मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् मधुराधिपतेर अखिलं मधुरम् His gunja berry necklace is sweet. His flower garland is sweet. His Yamuna river is sweet. His ripples are sweet. So imagine the thought process that has gone, the meditation of Ballavacharya who's writing this, that when Lord Krishna throws a stone in the river Yamuna and it makes a ripple, even that is sweet. His water is sweet. His lotuses are sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. Madhuradhipate Akhilam Madhuram Madhuradhipate Akhilam. Gopi Madhura Gopi Madhura Leela Madhura Yuktam Madhuram Bhuktam Madhuram Rishtam Madhuram Shrishtam Madhuram Rishtam Madhuram Shrishtam Madhuram Madhuradhipate Akhilam Madhuram Madhuradhipate Akhilam Madhuram. Krishna's gopis are sweet. His pastimes are sweet. His union is sweet. His delight is sweet. His courtesy is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor's sweetness. Madhuradhipatir Akhilam Madhur. I can't hear you. Madhuradhipate Akhilam Madhuram Madhuradhipatir Akhilam Madhuram Madhuradhipatir Akhilam. Gopa Madhura Gavo Madhura Gopa Madhura Gavo Madhura Yashtir Madhura Shrishtir Madhura Dalitam Madhuram Phalitam Madhuram Dalitam Madhuram Phalitam Madhuram Madhuradhipate Akhilam Madhuram Madhuradhipate Akhilam. Adharam Madhuram Vadanam Madhuram Nayanam Madhuram Hasitam Madhuram Hirdayam Madhuram Hirdayam Madhuram Hirdayam Madhuram Hirdayam Madhuram Hirdayam Madhuram Hirdayam Madhuram Adharam Madhuram Vadanam Madhuram Nayanam Madhuram Hasitam Madhuram Hirdayam Madhuram गमनं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपते मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरं मधुराधिपते मधुरा 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 हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते ताप्त कंचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानु सुते देवी प्रणमामि हरि प्रिय वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभयश्च कृपा सिन्धुभयेव च पतितानं पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हरिनाम हरिनाम हरिनामेव केवलम् कलो नास्तेव 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 गतिरन्यथा। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद, श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे राम 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 हरे। Together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ramo Ramo, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Ramo Ramo, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha, Shri Shri Rukmani Dwarkadhish Bhagavan ki jai, परम दयालु शिशु गोनिताय की जय, जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा महारानी की जय, जगत गुरु शिल प्रभुपाद की जय, समवेद भक्त वृंद की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंद हरि हरि बोल.
शारदामानन्दलोकं घनायकादिना घनाघनात्यं रक्तस्य कल्याण गुणान्नवचं वन्दे गुरश्री चरणारविन्दम्. कीर्तननित्यगीतं मादित्रमाद्यं मनश्वरशीलं रोमाञ्चकं पाशुतरङ्गभाजो वन्दे गुरुचरणारविन्दम्. संसारदावानलनीलोक प्राणायकारिण्य घनाघनत्यं भक्तस्य कल्याणगुणार्णवस्य वन्दे गुरुचरणारविन्दम्. विघ्नहाराधननित्यनाना सिंहारतन्मन्दिरमार्जनादभू युक्तश्च भक्तांश्च निजन्यतोऽपि वन्दे गुरुचरणारविन्दम्. चतुर्विधा श्री भगवत प्रसाद तद्वान्न तृतीयान् हरिभक्त संहान् तृतीयैव तृप्तिं भजतो सदैव वन्दे गुरुचरणारविन्दम्. संसारदावानलनीलोका प्राणायकारुण्य घनाघनात्यं श्रीराधिका माधवयरपार माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्नां श्रीराधिका माधवयरपार माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्नां प्रतीक्षण स्वादननुपश्य तीक्षण
Namaste Shri Radhe, Namaste Shri Shyam, Namaste Shri Radhe, Namaste Shri Shyam. Briyaksoyam Krishna, Sahachati Kuruchetamalitas, Tatahang Saradha, Tadadamupayo Sangamasukam, Tatapyanta Kelan, Modadamulali Panchamadrishe, Monome Kalindi, Pulanavatanaya Spahayati, Namaste Shri Radhe, Namaste Shri Shyam, Namaste Shri Radhe, Namaste Shri Shyam. Namaste Shri Radhe, Namaste Shri Shyam, Namaste Shri Radhe, Namaste Shri Shyam. Sugandha Makanda, Pakadamakadanda Simadodi, Vinician Devandi, Katamando Pavrinda Muridam, Katando Langmando, Natabinadalaishan Daganade, Mamanandam Brinda, Tipanam Tulantun Delayati, Namaste Shri Radhe, Namaste Shri Shyam, Namaste Shri Radhe, Namaste Shri Shyam. Namaste Shri Radhe, Namaste Shri Shyam, Namaste Shri Radhe, Namaste Shri Shyam. Cochin Bringi Gitam, Cochadanilla Bongi Shishita Kochin Golilasya Katadamalli Padimala Kochindara Shali Katakapalapari the Saboro Rishikanam Vrinda Pramadayati Vrindavanamidam Namaste Shri Radhe Namaste Shri Sham 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 Bala Rakshna Lakshmi Kabalayati Namyam Kabalayam Mukola Sakulam Kamalavanamalangi Yaticha Tasham Kastamasta Padamapanayapyam Gakaruchi Vichitrang Radhaya Kimadikalarupam Vilasati Namaste Shri Radhe Namaste Shri Sham 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 Namaste Shri Radhe Namaste Shri Sham
Bande